Hello, I'm Jennifer Freindorf. Thank you for joining me. All too often, we judge ourselves through a distorted lens, formed by what we see, what we think, and what we assume is the truth. But how often is that truth really accurate? How many times have you sat next to someone and immediately compared yourself, silently coming up short? How many times have you scrolled through social media, seeing a perfectly curated post and suddenly felt not enough, measuring yourself against an illusion? We carry around these preconceived ideas of how we should look, how we should act, what we should say. But where do these ideas come from? Who decided these standards? Who keeps it alive? The answer is we do. Through our conversations, our media, our silence, our judgments, we shape the very mold that confines us. But why do we keep feeding a system that makes so many of us feel like we're not enough? Maybe it's because we've been taught that fitting in equals safety, that acceptance comes when we mold ourselves into what's expected, when we shrink, silence, or smooth over the parts of us that don't fit. So we learn to judge ourselves first, and then each other. And it becomes a cycle, one we didn't ask for, but one we unknowingly keep spinning. But what if we stopped? What if we questioned the standards instead of ourselves? What if we celebrated the things that made us different instead of trying to fix them? Because the truth is, you were never meant to be a copy. You were meant to be you, unfiltered, evolving, human. And there is nothing more powerful than someone who chooses authenticity over approval. It takes courage to unlearn what the world taught you to be, to peel back the layers of expectation and finally ask, who am I underneath it all? Not who was I told to be, not who I became to be accepted, but the real me, the one who laughs too loud, feels too deeply, dreams too wildly. That version of you, they deserve to be seen. And no, not everyone will understand it. Not everyone will clap for your growth or cheer for your truth. But that's okay, because your journey isn't a performance, it's a homecoming, a return to self. So take up space, speak your truth, be bold enough to disappoint the wrong people in order to stay loyal to yourself. Because freedom doesn't come from fitting in. It comes from finally being real. They tell you to tone it down, to be smaller, quieter, less emotional, more put together. But those words are not instructions. They're a cage. And you weren't made for cages. You were made to feel, to cry when it hurts, to laugh until your stomach aches, to speak even when your voice shakes. You were made to question, to create, to grow in ways that scare even you sometimes. The world doesn't need more polished masks. It needs more people who are brave enough to be honest, who say, "This is me, not perfect, but present, not finished, but real." Healing starts the moment we stop abandoning ourselves for acceptance. And confidence? It's not loud or flashy. It's quiet and steady. It's choosing yourself every single day, even when the world doesn't applaud. We downplay our strengths and call it humility. We settle and call it being realistic. But what we're really doing is hiding, not from the world, but from the fear that maybe we're not enough without the mask, the performance, the perfection. And here's how it shows up. Procrastination dressed as, "I work better under pressure." Staying in comfort zones, disguised as, "I'm just not ready." Chasing people who don't choose us because deep down we don't choose ourselves. Setting goals, then sabotaging them because success feels unfamiliar, and unfamiliar can feel unsafe. But none of this is your fault. It's what you learned. Healing begins with awareness. It's looking into your patterns in the eye, not with shame, but with curiosity. Why do I do this? Where did I learn this? What am I trying to protect myself from? Living. So how do we shift? Well, we start small. We speak kinder to ourselves, even when it feels awkward. We celebrate progress instead of perfection. We show up even when we feel scared or unworthy. We stop waiting for confidence and move with courage instead. We rewrite the story from "I'm not enough" to "I am learning to love myself," from "I always mess things up" to "I'm building new habits," from "Who am I to deserve this" to "Why not me?" Because worthiness isn't earned, it's remembered. And every time you choose yourself, even in the smallest way, you get a little closer to that remembering. Our inner dialogue holds us back. The voice we hear in our heads every day. It can be a powerful force for growth, or it can keep us trapped in a cycle of doubt and criticism. The problem is, this voice often isn't our own. It's made up of words we've absorbed over time, the judgments of others, the criticisms we've internalized, the messages we've been told about ourselves, sometimes from people who don't truly know us, and sometimes from people who wanted us to doubt ourselves. We're taught to believe these voices, to believe the story we're not good enough, not smart enough, not worthy of the things we want. We carry the weight of other people's opinions that aren't based on truth, but on their own fears, biases, or insecurities. And for too long, we let these false narratives shape who we are and what we believe we can achieve. The truth is, these are interpretations, not facts. The things people say about us, or what we think they say about us, are often colored by our own perceptions, fears, and experiences. These words don't define who we are, and yet we hold on to them like they're the truth. But here's the thing, we have the power to rewrite that dialogue. We don't have to continue living by the scripts handed down to us. We can choose to reframe those voices and replace them with truth. Instead of listening to the voice that says, "You'll never be enough," we can choose to listen to the one that says, "I am enough, just as I am." Instead of hearing, "You'll never succeed," we can choose to hear, "Success is a journey, and I'm learning every day." We are not the stories that others tell us. We are not the stories that they choose for us. We are the stories we choose to tell ourselves. And once we realize that, everything changes. We listen to our inner dialogue because it feels like our truth. It's the voice that has been with us for so long. It's woven into the fabric of who we are, often shaped by past experiences, people we've encountered, and the world around us. But the question is, why do we trust it? Why do we believe it's the truth, even when it's not? Well, it's familiar. Our inner dialogue is a product of our past, of the things we've been told, the ways we've been treated, the experiences we've had. When we hear the same thoughts or criticisms over and over, they start to feel like the truth, even if they're not. Familiarity makes it easy to accept them without questioning. It's like an old friend we've grown used to, even if that friend isn't always looking out for our best interest. There's a strange comfort in believing the negative things our inner dialogue tells us. It's easier to stay small, to stay stuck, to stay in a comfort zone where we don't risk failure or rejection. If we believe the voice that says, "You're not good enough," then we never have to stretch beyond our comfort zone. We never have to risk the pain of trying and falling short. So we listen to it, because staying safe feels easier than the unknown. Society, media, and even people close to us often feed us certain ideas about who we are and what we should be. Over time, we internalize these messages and they become part of our inner dialogue. It's a loop. We hear something from an outside source, we believe it, and then we repeat it to ourselves. The louder the external voices, the more power they have over the internal conversation. Sometimes our inner dialogue can often sound like a voice of caution or protection. It warns us of potential danger, failure, or rejection. It tells us to play safe, and in a way, is trying to protect us from the pain of falling short or being hurt. But while it might feel like protection, it's actually a trap, one that keeps us from growing, trying new things, and discovering our true potential. Our inner dialogue becomes a habit. The more we listen to it, the more it becomes a part of our daily routine. Over time, this habit becomes automatic. We don't even question it. We accept it. But habits can be broken. Just like we can train ourselves to eat healthier or exercise more, we can train ourselves to change the way we speak to ourselves. As humans, we want consistency in our lives. So if we've believed something about ourselves for a long time, our mind wants to continue confirming that belief, even if it's not accurate. This is the power of confirmation bias. And if we believe we're not worthy of success, our mind will find ways to reinforce that belief, often overlooking evidence to the contrary. The key to breaking free from this cycle is recognizing that this inner dialogue is not the truth. It's an interpretation, an opinion, not a fact. And once we realize that, we can start questioning it, challenging it, and ultimately rewriting it. Because we are the authors of our own story, and we have the power to decide what role we want our inner dialogue to play in that story. Through self-awareness, mindfulness, and compassion, we can learn to challenge those thoughts, replace them with truth, and become our own greatest ally instead of our harshest critic. Our thoughts are powerful. They narrate our lives even when we aren't aware of it. That inner voice becomes the storyteller of our worth, our capabilities, and our place in the world. When that voice turns dark, filled with doubt, criticism, and fear, it doesn't just affect our mood, it distorts our reality. And this negative inner dialogue is sneaky. It's often rooted in past wounds and beliefs we unknowingly accept as truth. And over time, those thoughts become so familiar, they feel like facts. This kind of inner dialogue doesn't just hurt, it erodes. It shadows our sense of self, dims our light, and keeps us playing soft. But here's the truth. We are not our thoughts. We are the observer of them, the one with the power to question, challenge, and rewrite them. With awareness, we can start to notice that inner critic. We can ask, is this true? Would I say this to someone I love? We can replace judgment with compassion, fear with curiosity, harshness with grace. Healing starts not in silence, but in the conversations we have with ourselves. Real strength comes from tuning inward and asking, what do I believe about myself? What do I know to be true? The goal isn't to be immune to others' opinions, but not to be anchored in a self-awareness that cannot weather them. To hold compassion for ourselves strong enough to drown out the imagined voices of judgment. The most important relationship we'll ever have is the one we hold within. One of the most painful traps we fall into is believing that other people's behaviors reflects our value. When someone pulls away, criticizes us, or simply doesn't show up in a way that we hoped, it's so easy to make it personal. I must not be enough. Something's wrong with me. If I were different, maybe they'd treat me better. But here's the truth we often forget. People's reactions and actions are far more reflective of them, their fears, limitations, capacity. But still we internalize, especially if we've been conditioned to question our worth or to find identity through how others treat us. That internalized rejection becomes a mirror we carry everywhere, distorting our reflection until we believe we are broken, unworthy, or not good enough. But someone else's silence doesn't define your voice. Someone else's absence doesn't define your presence. And someone's inability to love you doesn't make you unlovable. The healing begins when we stop filtering our self-worth through the lens of someone else's actions or lack thereof. It starts when we realize we don't have to earn love or prove ourselves worthy. We already are. The work is to come back to the truth again and again, especially when the world tries to make us forget. So how do we fix this? You stop fighting yourself. You stop constantly trying to fix or hide parts of you. Acceptance doesn't mean giving up. It means making peace with who you are today while you still allowing space for growth. Peace begins when resistance ends. You become more authentic. Embrace your imperfections. No longer feel the need to pretend or perform. You show up in relationships and your life as your real self, not as a filtered or edited version. This authenticity invites deeper, more meaningful connections with others. You reduce shame and self-judgment. Flaws become painful when they're buried in shame. When you shine light on them with acceptance, shame loses its powers. This is part of me is more healing than this part of me makes me unlovable. You create room for growth. True growth doesn't come from self-rejection, but from self-compassion. Accepting a flaw doesn't mean you have to keep it. It just means you acknowledge it without hate. From this space, change becomes more gentle, possible, and sustainable. You build self-trust. When you embrace all parts of yourself, you learn to trust that you are enough, even in your messiness, even when you stumble. You stop needing perfection to feel worthy. You begin to feel safe within yourself. And you lead with compassion for yourself and others. The more you accept your own flaws, the more grace you extend to others. Judgment turns into understanding. Criticism softens into kindness. So I want you to repeat after me, believing everything you're about to say. I am whole, not in spite of my flaws or imperfections, but with them. Every part of me deserves compassion. I am not perfect, and I don't need to be. I accept my light and my shadow. My imperfections are part of my humanity and my beauty.